Hey everyone, it's May, and on the channel we talk about mental health and emotional health, and hard internal experiences. And today we're going to talk about how to create momentum when you feel like you're stuck, and when you feel like there's really nothing moving forward and you're feeling hopeless. So if you're feeling like, you know, you've been stuck in your mental health journey, you've been stuck in trying to figure out where to go next, and how to create that momentum to, keep learning and growing, this video is for you. So the first thing I want us to do is I want to acknowledge how we feel about the work, because it's an important step in terms of moving through what we're going through, right? Growing through what we're going through. You could have been trying to heal like for a long time. You could not want to heal, you could hate yourself, you could hate the work, right? And we have to acknowledge what our feelings are about the work before we can move through it. And we need to practice acceptance around how we feel about the work, right? How we feel about what's going on. When we're able to practice that radical acceptance, it's much easier to move through than when we're like, hating the work itself, or when we're hating the fact that we go through depression. We hate the fact that we have these experiences, and they're hard. They really are. And if that's where you're at, that's where you're at. Acceptance can be hard, but it is the first step in this. Is we have to acknowledge if we have any resentment towards ourselves or the work, and we have to be able to work through that. Let me know if you want a video on that. I feel like that could be a good topic. The other thing we have to do is we have to accept number two, when we don't want to actually move through the hopelessness or the stuckness, because forcing it when we're not ready and when we haven't really dealt with it can increase that frustration and that anger, right? That things aren't moving, that things aren't shifting, and I'm awful, and why am I trying anyway? If you're used to pushing through, this could also be your instinct, right? Is to just push past, your feelings about the work. So when you really feel like you're at the capacity, right, and you're at the place where it makes sense for you to do the following, then, and create that momentum, that's what we're going to do. So what we're going to do is we're really going to evaluate why it is what you tried in the past didn't work. Because if you're feeling stuck, you've tried something, right? And if you don't know, let's just go through some like common examples. So a lot of people try medication. Now, there could be many reasons why this didn't work. It could have been the wrong med. It could have given you bad side effects. It could have changed your personality too much. Maybe you stopped because you hated your provider, right? So whatever that reason is, it could. Now, number two, you went to therapy. Why didn't therapy work? Was the provider not what you wanted? Did it not really go deep enough? Did it go too deep and it scared you, right? We're gonna tease out that answer. And once we kind of have a growing list of knowing why things didn't work, that gives us some very crucial information. Because if you didn't find the right med, objectively, you're like, okay, I can go and try more med. It's when, the other stuff like, ugh, maybe I hate medication, or, I don't want to feel like a guinea pig going through all of this. And that is important, and that is valid. And you don't have to go back and get meds. I'm not asking you to, or telling you to. What I am saying is that it could be an avenue for more healing and growth. It is a potential step, because if we know it's not just chemical, right, moving beyond the meds, it is something to do with how you think or feel about life, what you're doing and thinking about life, what the state of the world is, right, how people are coming at you, what stimuli is happening. And maybe you got burnt out, there were, the depression got loud, the things weren't helping, right? The, way to do this work can be exhausting on its own. And then you add in the fact that you have like mental health problems, and the depression warps your like sense of reality, or you have anxiety and you're like, this anxiety is never going to end, it doesn't matter. And let's just say, you got burnt out because you were trying so many meds, right? How can we pace it so that you don't get burnt out this time? Do you need more time in between medications? Do you need smaller doses, right? We have power and agency in how we choose. And, if our providers are not going to do that for us, if insurance isn't going to pay for it, maybe that's not an option for us, or we change that option, whatever it is. Hi. I'm petting my cat. Do you want to come on camera? No? Okay. Let's say you hated your provider. Why did you hate your provider? Let's talk about what an ideal provider would be like, right? So maybe you can kind of see what I'm alluding to. What we're going to do is we're going to figure out why things didn't work, and that's going to give us information on how we can look for something that does work, right? So let's just say you tried therapy and meds, and you're like, well, they didn't work. It wasn't the provider. It was just that I didn't like them. I tried so many things, whatever. Okay, what do you think would help? What do you think you need? I don't know. Okay, let's figure it out. Let's research. Let's listen to people's stories. I think that's actually something that's later. But we're gaining the ability to try again, right? We're not even believing that it's true that we can get through this hopelessness, right? We're not even really like believing we can get through it. It's basically just throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks, right? When you're trying to do things, you don't have to like have hope that it's gonna work, right? So getting in that hopeful, hopeless cycle, which I've made other videos on, I'm showing me other videos on that, but the hopeful and hopeless cycle of trying new treatments and getting really hopeful and then crashing and feeling hopeless didn't work. If you don't have to subscribe to that. You can just go, you can unsubscribe to that cycle and still go and try to get meds and therapy and other treatments or coaching. And if you really, 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 really don't know what motivates you and what drives you, what made you click on this video, let's start there and use that. The fifth thing is research. There is so much research on depression. It can actually feel so overwhelming, and like anxiety and other things. I just did a video on depression, which is why my brain's there, but this is more general for pretty much any sort of internal experience you're dealing with. There's so much research. They say knowledge is power, and people are always researching, both scientifically, but also just like personally, how to deal, overcome, and work through depression and other things. Oh my god, my brain's just so on depression right now. There's probably skills you don't know about, techniques you don't know about, treatments you don't know about, right? Meditations you haven't done, right? There's so much knowledge. There's so much that you can still try, right? One of those things might be the thing that gets you over this hopelessness, over this hurdle that you've been in. Next thing is listening to people's stories, listening to other people who have moved through depression or are just in a different space in their life, or they're not where you are right now. That's really hard for you. That almost feels impossible to move to. You can listen to their stories and how they got to where they are. At the very least, this can just give you hope that it is possible to go from where you are to somewhere else that maybe isn't what you really, 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 really want, but is preferable to where you are now. A tip though I do have with this is don't listen to people's experiences that are vastly different than yours. So let's just say like you don't have a lot of resources. Don't listen to someone who maybe has like a lot of resources to help with their depression, because then it can feel very alienating, or anxiety or anything. Oh my god, I keep going there. But because then it can feel alienating and like, okay, well that can't happen for me because I can't go trips to Italy. I can't like, I don't know, be really rich. And again, vice versa, if you have a lot of resources, if that's where you are, it might not help to listen to people who can't really access therapy or meds or whatever. We can talk about the class stuff, don't get me started, but that also might feel like I don't really know why I'm watching this. I'm not really getting what I need out of this, right? Another example is like the internal experience. So let's just say someone, like you have anxiety, and let's just say you have anxiety for hours. You have hours long panic attack. It's a thing. It's awful. I've had it a little bit. Shout out to you if you deal with that. Hell, oh my god, just sending you some love. Why are you biting me? What are we doing? Do you have anxiety? Was that me? Is that you telling me you have anxiety? We can work on that. I'm like, I can fix you. I know how to help you feel better. It's so fun. No, what you're really saying is pay attention to me and stop doing your video. You don't want to listen to someone who maybe had anxiety 30 seconds a day, or about a very specific topic, because then that's also going to feel alienating. You're like, well, that wasn't as intense. This was something that was a struggle for me for a very long time, was trying to find people who had harder experiences than me, because I just deal with a lot, okay? I'm sure I've talked about it in other videos, or, I will tell more over time, but there's just a lot going on in here. And what felt really alienating to me is when people were like, oh, I just did deep breathing and it worked. And I was like, I can do deep breathing all day, that didn't help, right? because it was a multi-layered experience for me. It was like I felt depression and anxiety, and then I wanted to throw up, and then blah, 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 and then I wanted to hurt myself. It's like so much, okay? So I had to find other people who had that experience, right? And now the last thing we're gonna do is we're gonna make a plan. And what I want you to do, there'll probably be a little graph here, but what I want you to do is take your experience, okay? And I want you to put it on a scale of, what is least intense and most intense. We can start with 1 to 10, but if it's easier to do like 1, 2, 3, this is all very flexible. You can even do more than 10 if that's really what you need. Either way, what we're going to do is we're going to take all the different intensities of the experience, and we're going to make a plan based on each one of these intensities. But even in these intensities, we're going to break them down more. So just start with that, just start with the list. So we're going to do this example of depression. Depression, number 1's the highest. We're gonna do it like that. So number 1 is can't get out of bed. Number 2 is you can be out of bed, but it feels awful. And then number 3 is feeling like life could be good. Then what we're gonna do is break down each of these intensities. So when you're at can't get out of bed, what can you do to soothe yourself? Like what thoughts, feelings, and actions can you take? Can you conjure that'll be most helpful for you? So what thoughts would be most helpful? Do you need soothing? I can't get out of bed. I feel like myself. It's okay. Empowerment. I'll beat myself up about it, right? So that's what I would put. What feelings can we conjure and visualize, try to manifest into our life? What body sensation can we cultivate? Oftentimes temperature really helps, right? So if you can't get out of bed, but you find that you can, like put water on your head, or you can't get out of bed, but only for a few moments, you can walk outside and change temperature, or take a cool shower. So if you don't know, then it's time to experiment. Woo! We're gonna experiment and try to figure out what helps you the most. Depending on what it is, it could be harm reduction, or it could be something else, right? It's really based on what the experience is and what intensity you're at, right? So if you're at an intensity where things are really, 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 really tough, we're thinking about basic needs, we're thinking about harm reduction, we're thinking about small things we can do to help ourselves feel better. If we're at a lower intensity, we might be thinking about big things. We're thinking about moving towards, big life changes, or just like going for long walks, or making big meals, whatever it is for you, right? That really helps you. But basically, you're gonna make a plan at each intensity, and only you're gonna really know what that is. But you probably are already trying to do some of those things, and so that's what you're gonna start with for each of them. Is like, what do you do? What do you tell yourself that has been helpful? What self-care do you do, basically, at each of these stages? And then what you can do each day is you can take that intensity,
why we put this on a scale is that
we're basically trying to move through through the intensities, right? So, because this is the rewiring process, is when we're able to have a concrete plan of, okay, this is what I'm going to do when I'm feeling like this, and then, we can move through to the next intensity. So maybe what we actually did helped us and moved our body a little bit. Okay, now we're actually in a different part of the scale, and then we're going to do that. And then the goal is, hopefully, over time, that rewiring process will take place, because you're not, self-sabotaging or being stuck in the hopelessness. You have a plan, right? Even if your plan is just to challenge the hopelessness. Sometimes that's what you have to do for a really long time. The second thing you can do is we can go even deeper into this, okay? So you can take each intensity. So let's say we're taking can't get out of bed. We can do can't get out of bed and then break the different, layers of can't get out of bed. So we can label can't get out of bed at all, can only get out of bed for basic needs, can only get out of bed for 5 minutes, can only get out of bed to go to work, right? Whatever, kind of shows up for you. And then we can make plans based on each and every single one of those experiences. So this is you can go very, very in depth. This can be as general, say, okay, this is where I'm at, which is what I'm going to do. And again, what we're trying to do is we're trying to help ourselves in the ways that we can, and, do your wiring process, and eventually, one day this is gonna happen, trust me. You're gonna be at one intensity, and it's gonna be like, you're not feeling great, okay? Whatever, like, kind of like the more worse experiences, maybe having a lot of panic attacks or depression. And then in one day, you're going to go from that intensity, and because you've done so much work at each and every single part of the intensity scale, you're going to move from intense to low intensity. And it's just going to be natural. You're just going to notice it. You're like, oh, okay. You're not going to notice it until the end of the day. You'll be at one intensity. That's really hard. And you'll move through, and then as the day goes on, this leaves your body. You feel more calm or more relieved, whatever it is. And then at the end of the day, you're like, I just went through that entire scale today, and it wasn't that hard. And so we're teaching ourselves to take care of ourselves. We're teaching ourselves to move through this, right? So there you have it. I understand how confusing this is. I understand how hard it can be to really move through these experiences. So if you feel like you need more help, please subscribe. Please check out my other videos. I have some free trainings in the description. That could be really helpful with finding more resources, more tools, more ways to move through. Sometimes you just need to hear the same thing in a different way, or you need to hear more information with this, like maybe you are vibing with it, but you're like, what is the practice of this? I don't understand. Let's, dive into more of this. So yeah, feel free to check out other videos or just subscribe for more. Next video, I'm going to be talking about the secret things that impact our mental health that we don't really know about or think about. So that'll be exciting. I'm excited to get that one out. And yeah, I hope this was helpful. Oh, also, the links to the exercises are going to be in the description. Alright, take care and much love to all of you. What is happening? What is happening?